So a recent report released by Amazon Watch details how corporate interests and the right-wing leader of Brazil have gotten together in order to exploit and ultimately destroy the Amazon rainforest for profit. Now, this is Christian Poirier, who's Amazon Watch's program director. Now, he talked to Mint Press News, and he told him that, quote, the right-wing leader of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, has, quote, overseen the most significant rollback and full-on assault on human rights and environmental protection in Brazil since the fall of the country's military dictatorship and the reinstallation of democracy in 1985. Now, he also added, quote, Bolsonaro is hearkening back to an era of rampant environmental destruction and rights abuses that someone called genocide of indigenous peoples by attacking socio-environmental policy that is responsible for indigenous land rights, that is responsible for the protection of forests in this country, and he's doing so at a very rapid pace. Now, I'm, of course, going to explain how rapid of a pace and how dangerous this is. But first, I want to explain what he's actually done. Now, among his first moves as president, Bolsonaro stripped Brazil's National Indian Foundation of its authority to create new reserves for indigenous nations and had transferred control of both it and the country's forest service to its agricultural ministry. Now, that's a bad thing because that ministry happens to be under his control. And so that already, you see an erosion of indigenous rights in Brazil. But it gets worse, right? Especially for the Amazon. Now, since Bolsonaro's inauguration, the Amazon forest has seen a clear cutting of 285 square miles in just 1 month. That is the highest level of deforestation in a decade and more than twice the rate 2 years ago when it was under, of course, Lula da Silva, who, by the way, right now is a political prisoner. So now that's obviously disastrous. The Amazon is called the lungs of the world because, of course, the oxygen, if you have to, this is like basic science, right? Photosynthesis, but they also absorb a ton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. If you cut down the forests, you cut down the Amazon, you not only lose a ton of biodiversity and destroy the homes of a lot of indigenous people, the habitats of a lot of animals, but you're also dealing a huge blow to oxygen. We kind of need that, right? So now observers cited an escalation in illegal logging and land theft during the Bolsonaro administration, with the first raid on an indigenous reserve occurring December 30th, 2 days before he took office. Not only that, but of course back in April, Bolsonaro announced the dissolution of Brazil's National Council of the Environment, a government body with over 100 members, including independent representatives of environmental groups tasked with protecting the forest. He proposed replacing it with a new committee of 6, which, of course, would be all handpicked by him, including a man named Ricardo Salles, his nominee for environmental minister, and a close ally, along with 5 other presidential appointments. Nothing fishy about that at all. Oh no, let's just, appoint my cronies who are going to do everything that I want in this committee. Now, Poirier also noted that, quote, these are a wish list of Brazil's agribusiness sector and its mining sector to penetrate into traditionally protected areas, and that's precisely what Bolsonaro is doing, to the detriment of the human rights of indigenous peoples and traditional peoples in the Amazon, and to the detriment of global climatic stability. So that's what they're doing, right? Corporations and the Bolsonaro right-wing government, who, by the way, the corporations wanted someone like Bolsonaro for a long, long time. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, I'm not surprised that they're working together, but I wouldn't be surprised that they had a hand in putting Bolsonaro in power. Again, there were phony corruption charges against Lula da Silva, who would have actually won the election. Now, da Silva is a leftist leader. Without him being eligible and able to run, because he was put in prison for these corruption charges, Bolsonaro basically ran unopposed. So he ended up winning. And of course, he helps his friends, the corporations, the corporate sector. Now, who are these corporations? Well, the specific corporate targets in the report are basically commodity importers, traders, and financial institutions that have done business with some of the worst actors in Brazil's agro-industrial sector. Now, by worst actors, basically environmental criminals, right? Those who have been found guilty and fined by Brazil's environmental agency for environmental crimes ranging from illegal deforestation to improper paperwork for wood to even slave labor in their supply chains since 2017, Poirier stated. And so here you have, of course, the Brazilian business sector basically dooming the planet for profit. Now, it's not just local businesses in Brazil that are doing this. You also have American corporations and banks getting involved and profiting too. For one, you have Coca-Cola, right? You also have palm oil company Saranda, banks like Liberty Woods, and lots of others that we don't necessarily know about. They're making money off destroying indigenous land for resources and exacerbating climate destruction. And they're doing so for profit. This is what happens when you put a far-right leader into office. They will always end up working for the business interests over the planet and over human rights. And at a time where climate change is an existential crisis, we need better actors around the world if we're planning to be around in the future. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.